A man knelt on wet grass beside a row of headstones. His knees pressed into the cold mud. He didn't even care. 20 feet ahead, a small figure sat hunched on the ground, shoulders shaking. A small child. Alone. No parent in sight. No adult anywhere near her. Just a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, curled up beside a grave with both arms around her knees. She was crying. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that means someone has been hurting for a very long time. The man stood slowly. He looked all around. Nobody. He started walking toward her. No plan. No speech ready. The man was Jackie Chan. And he had no idea what he was walking into. What that little girl told him in the next few minutes left the toughest action star on earth completely speechless. Stay with me on this one. Jackie Chan didn't bring bodyguards that day. No assistant. No manager. No driver. He drove himself to the cemetery in a plain dark sedan, wore a faded baseball cap pulled low, and carried a single bunch of white flowers wrapped in brown paper. He didn't want to be recognized. He didn't want anyone bowing or asking for photos. Not today. He was there to visit someone. A stuntman named Wei. They'd worked together back in the early days, long before Hollywood. Back when Jackie was still getting hit for real and nobody outside of Hong Kong knew his name. Wei had been one of the guys who caught him when he fell. Literally. Jackie would throw himself off a building, and Wei would be down below making sure the landing didn't kill him. They did that for years. Then Wei got sick, and within 6 months he was gone. Jackie came to see him once a year. Same cemetery. Same headstone. Same flowers. He placed the bunch down, pulled a few weeds away from the base of the stone, and just stood there for a while. He talked to Wei the way people talk to headstones. Quietly, a little awkwardly, telling him things that didn't really matter. How the last movie went. How his knees were getting worse. How he still thought about that one fall in 1985 when the mat wasn't where it was supposed to be and Wei grabbed him by the jacket midair. Stuff like that. When he was done, he turned and started walking back toward the car. That's when he heard it. A sound so small he almost missed it. A thin, broken kind of crying. Not a wail. Not a scream. Just a soft, steady sound. Like air leaking out of something that was already empty. He stopped. Looked around. The cemetery was mostly flat. Rows of low headstones with a few trees breaking up the lines. And there, about 20 feet off the main path, he saw her. A little girl sitting on the ground beside a grave. She had her arms wrapped around her knees and her face was pressed into them. Her whole body shook with each breath. Jackie looked around again. No adult. No parent waiting on a bench. No car idling nearby. The girl was completely alone. Now here's the thing. Jackie Chan has played a hero in probably 100 movies. He's jumped off buildings, fought entire armies, saved the day 1,000 times on screen. But in real life, he'll tell you he's not always sure what to do. He stood there for a good 10 seconds, not moving, just watching. Part of him thought maybe he should leave her alone. Maybe someone was coming. Maybe it wasn't his business. But another part of him, the part that remembered being a kid with no one around, that part wouldn't let him walk away. He approached slowly. Didn't want to scare her. When he was about 5 feet away, he crouched down so he wasn't towering over her. He spoke softly. "Hey, are you okay?" She flinched. Hard. Her whole body jerked like someone had clapped their hands next to her ear. She looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. She didn't recognize him. He was just a stranger in a baseball cap. Her face was streaked with tears and dirt. She had a school uniform on. White shirt, dark skirt. The shirt was too tight across the shoulders. The skirt was frayed at the hem. Neither one fit right. These were clothes that hadn't been replaced in a long time. She didn't answer. Jackie sat down on the grass. Right there. He didn't care about his clothes. He just lowered himself down to her level and sat a few feet away, giving her space. "You don't have to talk," he said. "I just want to make sure you're safe." She stared at him, sniffed, wiped her nose with the back of her hand. Then she pointed at the headstone next to her. Jackie looked at it. A simple stone. A woman's name. The dates told him everything he needed to know. The woman had died less than a year ago. She'd been 31 years old. "That's my mama," the girl said. Her voice was so thin it barely made it across the space between them. Jackie didn't say anything right away. He just nodded. He looked at the headstone, then back at the girl. She was small, thin, not just kid thin. The kind of thin that means meals aren't regular. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail that hadn't been brushed in days. There were dark circles under her eyes. Something was very wrong here. This wasn't just a child visiting a grave. This was a child with no one watching over her. "What's your name?" Jackie asked. "May," she said. "Where's your family, May? Who brought you here?" She didn't answer that one. She just looked down at the grass and pulled at it with her fingers. And right then, sitting on that cold ground, Jackie Chan felt something shift inside him. He didn't know it yet, but he was about 10 minutes away from hearing a story that would change the way he saw everything. May didn't tell her story all at once. Came out in pieces. Small pieces, like she was handing him broken glass and being careful not to cut either one of them. Her mother had gotten sick about 2 years before. Stomach pain that wouldn't go away. By the time she went to a doctor, it was already bad. Cancer. The kind that moves fast and doesn't negotiate. May's mother worked in a garment factory. No real savings. No insurance worth anything. She tried treatments for a while, but the money ran out before the cancer did. May told this part without crying. That's what got to Jackie. A child this young talking about her mother dying, and her voice was steady, flat, like she'd told it before, maybe to herself, maybe to the headstone, so many times that the words didn't cut anymore. They were just facts now. "She died in the hospital," May said. "I was at school. Grandma came and got me. She said Mama was sleeping and wouldn't wake up." Jackie sat very still. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to comfort her with words. He'd learned a long time ago that sometimes the most useful thing you can do is just shut up and listen. "What about your dad?" he asked after a while. May shrugged. One shoulder. "Small. He left when I was little. Mama said he went to work somewhere far away. He never came back. So that was it. No father. Mother gone. That left the grandmother." May had been living with her grandmother since the funeral. A small apartment, she said. 2 rooms. The grandmother was old. Not elderly but active old. Old in the way that means everything hurts and nothing works right anymore. Bad knees. Bad back. Trouble breathing. But she'd taken May in because there was no one else. For a few months, things held together. Barely, but they held. Grandma cooked. May went to school. They managed. Then the grandmother started getting worse. Believe me, when May described this part, even the way she described it was heavy. The grandmother began forgetting things. Leaving the stove on. Putting shoes in the refrigerator. Calling May by her mother's name. Then came the falls. One in the kitchen. One in the bathroom. The second one cracked something in her hip. After that, she couldn't walk without holding the wall. May stopped going to school. Not because anyone told her to. Because someone had to be home. Someone had to cook the rice. Someone had to help her grandmother get to the bathroom and back. Someone had to make sure the stove was off and the door was locked at night. May was 7 years old and she became the adult in that apartment. She'd been missing school for weeks. Nobody came to check. Nobody called. In a system already stretched too thin, one quiet little girl slipping through the cracks didn't make a sound. Now here's where it turns. Every afternoon, when her grandmother fell asleep, May would leave the apartment, walk 14 blocks to the cemetery, and sit beside her mother's grave. She talked to her, told her about the day, asked her questions she knew wouldn't get answered. She did this every single day. Rain or heat, it didn't matter. It was the one thing in her life that was hers. Jackie listened to all of this without moving. His hands were resting on his knees. His jaw was tight. He's a man who's been in 1,000 fake fights. But the thing sitting in front of him right now was real, and there was no choreography for it. No stunt coordinator telling him where to land. "May," he said, "have you eaten today?" She shook her head. Jackie stood up. There was a small convenience shop near the cemetery entrance. He walked there fast, bought rice balls, a bottle of juice, a package of dried fruit, and some sweet buns. He brought it all back and set it on the grass between them. May looked at the food like she wasn't sure it was real. Then she reached for a rice ball and ate it in about 4 bites. He sat with her while she ate. Didn't rush her. Didn't ask more questions. Just sat there on the damp ground in his muddy jeans and his baseball cap and let her eat. When she was done, he asked if he could walk her to the gate. She nodded. They walked together slowly. She was small beside him. The top of her head barely reached his hip. At the gate, Jackie stopped. May, does your grandmother know you come here? She's sleeping, May said. She sleeps a lot now. Okay, you go straight home. Okay? No stops. She nodded, looked up at him, didn't say thank you, didn't smile, just turned and walked through the gate and onto the sidewalk beyond it. Jackie watched her go. He stood there until she was about a block away, getting smaller, then he turned and walked back into the cemetery. He found a bench near the main path and sat down. He took a breath, then another. He pulled out his phone, not to call anyone, just to hold something. He looked up at the sky. Gray, overcast, the kind of sky that can't decide if it's going to rain or not. He exhaled long and slow. He'd done something good today. He'd listened to a child who needed someone to listen. He'd fed her. He'd walked her to the gate. It wasn't enough, not really, but it was something. And sometimes something is all you can offer. Jackie leaned back on the bench. His shoulders dropped. The tension in his chest loosened for the first time in an hour. He thought about Wei. He thought about May's mother. He thought about how strange it was that he'd come to visit the dead and ended up sitting with the living. The cemetery was quiet. A bird landed on a headstone nearby and sat there, tilting its head. Jackie closed his eyes for just a second. Let the silence settle. It felt, for a moment, like everything was going to be okay. Then he opened his eyes. Something was wrong. He was looking toward the gate, the direction May had walked. But she wasn't heading left, toward the residential streets. She wasn't heading right, toward the bus stops. She had crossed the road and was walking along the cemetery's outer wall, toward the back. Jackie stood up. There was nothing behind the cemetery. No apartments, no shops, just the maintenance area, a utility road, a few storage structures where the groundskeepers kept their tools and mowers. No child walks that direction to go home. He moved fast, not running but close. He followed the outer wall of the cemetery on the inside, keeping her in sight through the iron fence. She turned a corner. He lost her for a few seconds and his stomach dropped. Then he reached the back section and saw her again. May walked up to a small maintenance shed. Concrete walls, tin roof, a rusted metal door that didn't close all the way. She pulled it open, slipped inside, and disappeared. Jackie stood completely still. She wasn't going home to her grandmother. She wasn't going home at all. He walked to the shed. The door was slightly open. He could see inside. And what he saw, believe me, is the kind of thing that sits in your chest and doesn't leave. A piece of cardboard on the floor. A thin blanket, filthy, bunched up against the wall. A plastic bag with a few pieces of clothing inside. A water bottle almost empty. A single shoe that didn't match anything she was wearing. And May, sitting on the cardboard, pulling her knees back up to her chest. Settling in like this was just another evening. This was where she lived. Jackie pushed the door open slowly. May looked up. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch this time. She just looked at him with those flat, exhausted eyes. And she said something that hit him harder than any punch he'd ever taken on screen or off it. Please don't tell anyone. They'll take me away. Jackie crouched down in the doorway. His throat was tight. He couldn't speak for a few seconds. When he did, his voice was rough. May, where is your grandmother? The girl looked at the floor. May, she died. May whispered. 2 weeks ago. The whole story he'd been told. The grandmother sleeping a lot, the walking to the cemetery every afternoon. It rearranged itself in his head in an instant. The grandmother wasn't sleeping. The grandmother was dead. May had been alone, completely alone, for 2 weeks. A 7-year-old child with no family, no guardian, no one on this earth who was looking for her. She'd been coming to this cemetery not just to talk to her mother. She'd been sleeping here. Jackie sat down on the ground outside the shed. He put his face in his hands. This wasn't a sad story anymore. This was an emergency. If you're still with me on this, go ahead and hit subscribe. Because what Jackie did next matters. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. First one. A local social services number. He got a recording. Pressed buttons. Got transferred. Got put on hold. 5 minutes of nothing. Then someone picked up, asked for a case number, and when Jackie said he didn't have one, told him to call a different department. He called the different department. Another hold. Another transfer. He explained the situation 3 times to 3 different people. A child. Alone. Living in a cemetery shed. No family. 7 years old. The third person told him someone could come out to assess the situation within 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 days. For a child sleeping on cardboard. Jackie hung up. He stared at the phone. Then he looked back at May, still sitting inside the shed, watching him through the gap in the door. She hadn't moved. She was used to waiting. She was used to nothing happening. Now here's the thing. Most people, even good people, would have stopped there. They'd made the calls. They'd reported it. They'd done what the system asked them to do. And they'd drive home feeling heavy but telling themselves someone would handle it. Jackie Chan did not drive home. He walked back to the shed and knelt down so he was eye level with May. "I'm going to help you," he said. "But you have to come with me right now. Can you do that?" She stared at him. This man she didn't know. This stranger in a baseball cap who'd bought her rice balls and was now kneeling in the dirt outside a maintenance shed asking her to trust him. Every instinct in her body had to be screaming no. Don't go with strangers. Don't trust anyone. The world has taken everything from you and it will take more if you let it. But May looked at Jackie's face. And whatever she saw there, it was enough. She reached for the plastic bag with her clothes. She stood up. She walked out of the shed. Jackie took off his jacket and put it around her shoulders. Fell past her knees. She looked like she was wearing a tent. But she held it closed with both hands and walked beside him toward the car. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do yet. He had no plan past getting her out of that shed. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. That child was not spending another night on a piece of cardboard next to a rusted lawn mower. He opened the car door for her. She climbed in. He buckled her seatbelt because she couldn't reach it properly. Then he got in the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the cemetery lot. May didn't say a word. She held the jacket tight and looked out the window. Jackie glanced at her in the mirror. Her face was blank. Not calm. Not afraid. Just blank. The face of someone who stopped expecting things a long time ago. He drove toward the center of town, making calls as he went. Not to the government this time. To people he knew. People who could actually do something before 72 hours turned into a week turned into never. There was a restaurant on the east side of town that Jackie had known about for years. Small place. Family run. A woman named Lien owned it. She'd fed Jackie and his crew once after a late-night shoot when every other kitchen in the district was closed. He'd never forgotten it. Lien was the kind of person who fed you first and asked questions second. Jackie pulled up outside and killed the engine. May was still holding the jacket tight. She hadn't spoken since the shed. "We're going to go inside," Jackie said. "There's a woman in there named Lien. She's good people. We're going to sit down and eat something, and then I'm going to figure out what happens next. Okay?" May looked at the restaurant, looked back at him, nodded once. Lien met them at the door. She took one look at May and didn't ask a single question. She just said, come in," and led them to a table in the back, away from the window, away from the other customers. Within 3 minutes there was hot soup on the table, then noodles, then steamed vegetables, then pork buns. More food than May had probably seen in weeks. May didn't move at first. She sat very still and stared at the table like she was memorizing it, like she thought it might disappear. "Go ahead," Jackie said. "Eat." She picked up the spoon. Her hand shook. She dipped it into the soup and brought it to her mouth, and when the taste hit her, something broke loose. She started crying. Not the quiet cemetery crying. This was different. This was loud and messy and real. The sound of a child who had been holding everything together with nothing and finally, in the presence of hot soup and a warm room, couldn't hold it anymore. Jackie didn't touch her, didn't try to hush her. He sat across the table with his hands flat on the surface and let her cry until she was done. Lien brought a box of tissues and set it on the table without a word. Then she went back to the kitchen and closed the door. Took a few minutes. Then May wiped her face, picked up the spoon again, and started eating. She ate slowly this time, steady, like she was teaching herself to trust that the food would still be there when she looked down. Jackie watched her eat, and he made his calls. First call, his foundation. He ran a charitable organization that had been operating for years, funding scholarships, building schools, supporting children in poverty across the region. He got his director on the line and explained the situation in plain terms. Child, 7. No parents. No guardian. No home. Living in a cemetery shed. Needs immediate placement. The director started talking about timelines and paperwork and assessments. Jackie cut him off. Tonight, he said. Not next week. Tonight. Second call. A lawyer. Someone who handled child welfare cases. Jackie told him what had happened with social services. The 72-hour window. The transfers. The hold music. The lawyer listened and said he'd start making calls immediately. There were emergency provisions for children in immediate danger. The system was slow, but it could be pushed if the right pressure was applied in the right places. Third call. May's school. Jackie asked to speak to the principal. He identified himself. He said one of their students had been missing for weeks and no one had followed up. There was a long pause on the other end. Then the principal said they had limited resources for tracking attendance. Jackie said that wasn't good enough. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He just said, "A child in your care disappeared and nobody noticed. I need you to understand what that means." The principal said she'd look into it. Jackie hung up and set the phone on the table. May had finished the noodles and was working on a pork bun. She was watching him. "Are you someone important?" she asked. Jackie almost laughed. Almost. "No," he said. "I'm just a guy who does movies." "My mama liked movies," May said. "She liked the funny ones." "Yeah." She used to laugh really loud. The neighbors would bang on the wall. Jackie smiled. It was the first time he'd smiled since the cemetery. "That's the best kind of laugh," he said. "The kind that bothers the neighbors." May didn't smile back, but something in her face shifted. Just a fraction. The blankness cracked, just barely, and underneath it there was something that looked like it might one day become trust. They sat in that restaurant for 2 hours. Lien kept bringing food. Tea for Jackie. Warm milk for May. Lien never asked who the girl was. Never asked why she was dirty and thin and wearing a school uniform that didn't fit. Some people just understand without asking, and Lien was one of those people. During those 2 hours, Jackie's calls started producing results. The lawyer reached an emergency magistrate who authorized a temporary protection order. The foundation identified a vetted foster family. A couple in a nearby district who had taken in children before and had been reviewed and approved by the foundation's own screening process. They had room. They were willing. They could take May that night. Jackie explained this to May carefully. He told her she was going to stay with a family. A safe family. Good people. She would have her own bed. She would go back to school. No one was going to put her in a government home. He promised her that. May listened. She didn't react at first. Then she asked one question. "Can I still visit my mama?" Jackie's jaw tightened. He nodded. "Every week," he said. "I'll make sure of it." The foster mother arrived at the restaurant just after 7 in the evening. A woman in her 40s. Calm face. Warm hands. She knelt down in front of May and said, "Hi, sweetheart. My name is Shu. I made your bed up with extra blankets because I wasn't sure which kind you like." May looked at Jackie. He nodded. She stood up, still wearing his jacket, and walked toward Shu. At the door she stopped, turned around. looked at Jackie one more time. She didn't say thank you. She didn't wave. She just looked at him. A long, steady look from a 7-year-old who had been through more than most adults survive. Then she turned and left with Shu. Jackie sat alone at the table. The restaurant was almost empty now. Lien came out and sat across from him without asking. She poured him more tea. "That was a good thing you did," she said. Jackie didn't answer. He picked up the tea. His hand wasn't steady. 2 weeks later, Jackie drove back to the cemetery. Same sedan. Same baseball cap. But this time there was a passenger. May sat in the back seat wearing new clothes. A blue jacket that actually fit. Clean shoes. Her hair was brushed and pulled back neatly. She had a small bunch of flowers in her lap. Yellow ones. She'd picked them out herself. Jackie watched her in the mirror. She looked different. Not transformed. Not magically healed. That's not how it works with kids who've been through what she'd been through. But she looked like someone who had slept in a bed. Someone who had eaten 3 meals a day for 14 straight days. Someone whose world had stopped falling apart, at least for now. They pulled into the cemetery lot. Jackie parked in the same spot he'd parked 2 weeks ago. He got out and opened her door. She climbed out holding the flowers carefully, like they were made of something fragile. They walked together through the gate and along the main path. Jackie knew the way now. He'd memorized it without meaning to. Past the 3rd row. Left at the stone bench. 12 headstones down. May's mother's grave looked different. Someone had cleaned it. The weeds were gone. The stone had been washed. Jackie had sent someone from his foundation to take care of it earlier that week. He hadn't told May. He'd just done it. May noticed immediately. She stopped walking and stared at the headstone. Then she looked up at Jackie. She didn't ask who did it. She just looked at him with that same steady gaze, the one that said more than any words a 7-year-old could put together. She walked forward and knelt in front of the stone. She placed the yellow flowers against the base, arranging them carefully, shifting one stem, then another until they were right. Then she put both hands flat on the grass in front of the headstone and started talking. "Hi, Mama. I'm okay now. I have a new bed. It has a blue blanket and a white one. Shu makes rice in the morning. It's not as good as yours, but it's okay. I'm going back to school on Monday. Shu bought me new pencils. The yellow kind." She talked for a long time. Jackie stood a few feet back and let her. He didn't listen to most of it. It wasn't for him. He looked at the sky. Clear this time. The sun was low and warm, and the cemetery was quiet in that particular way that cemeteries get in the late afternoon, when the visitors have mostly gone and the only sound is wind moving through the trees. When May was finished, she stood up and wiped her hands on her jacket. She turned to Jackie. "Can we come back next week?" "Yes. Promise. Promise." They walked back toward the car. Slowly. No rush. May walked close to him, and at one point her hand brushed against his, and then she grabbed 2 of his fingers and held on. Jackie didn't react. He just kept walking, letting a 7-year-old hold onto his hand like it was a railing on a high staircase. At the car, he opened her door again. She climbed in. He buckled her seatbelt. She looked up at him. "Are you going to visit your friend too?" Jackie paused. "My friend. The one you came to see. Before. You said you were visiting someone." He'd almost forgotten. Wait. The reason he'd come to the cemetery that first day in the first place. The stuntman who used to catch him when he fell. "Yeah," Jackie said. "I'll come back for him another day." He closed her door and stood there for a moment in the parking lot. The sun was warm on the back of his neck. He could hear birds somewhere above him. He took a slow breath and let it out. Jackie never talked about that day publicly. He didn't post about it. He didn't hold a press conference. He didn't use May's story for publicity or fundraising or any kind of campaign. The story surfaced years later through someone connected to his foundation who mentioned it in passing during an interview. Even then, the details were thin. Jackie had asked everyone involved to keep it quiet. Not for legal reasons. Because it was hers. It was May's story, and she was the one who got to decide if the world heard it. What people found out was this. May stayed with the foster family. She went back to school. Jackie's foundation covered her expenses. Tuition, medical checkups, clothing, everything. He visited her. Not once. Not as a gesture. Regularly. He showed up. He took her to the cemetery when he could. When he couldn't, he made sure someone else did. He kept his promise. There was no dramatic speech. No movie moment where the music swells and the hero says something wise. Jackie Chan, a man who had spent his entire life performing impossible physical feats for an audience of millions, found that the most important thing he ever did was the quietest. Sitting on cold grass. Listening. Buying rice balls. Making phone calls. Showing up. That's it. That's the whole story. A man walked into a cemetery to visit an old friend. He heard a child crying. He could have kept walking. Almost anyone would have. The world is full of crying, and most of us have learned how to not hear it. Jackie heard it. He stopped. He sat down in the mud. And everything that came after, every phone call, every fight with the system, every drive back to that cemetery, started with that one decision. The decision to not keep walking. Sometimes the biggest thing a person can do is the smallest thing. Sit down. Listen. Stay. Jackie Chan has broken every bone in his body at least once. He's fallen off buildings. He's been set on fire. Ask him what the hardest thing he ever did was, and he won't tell you about any of that. He'll tell you about a little girl and a grave and a Tuesday afternoon when he almost walked away. Almost.